If there's one thing I want everybody to know about Mustangs, you will be more successful if you create a partnership where you are working together instead of a control-based relationship where you are always yielding and working towards your own agenda. A partnership means that both sides have a voice, and that means that you are communicating, that you are understanding what they're feeling, what they're needing, what they're wanting, and they are learning to understand what you're feeling, what you're needing, what you're wanting, what your goals are. It is a tricky balance. It's a lot easier to just say it's going to be control-based. We are going for a trail ride today. We are going to go this direction. We are going to go to this competition. We are going to get in the trailer today, and to do whatever you can to make that happen. That may or may not work with a Mustang.
There are healers on this planet with the power to soften the suffering of mankind, yet they have remained in the recesses of the world, abused, discarded, and labeled as trash. This is The Touch of a Mustang. I am your host, Shalise Clough, and I'm here to tell the story of wild horses, Mustangs, and the humans who are discovering and sharing their gifts while working to protect their well-being and preserve their spirit, so this divine power won't be lost. Join us on this quest with the Wild Mustang.
Welcome back to The Touch of a Mustang. It has been a minute. I have not had the chance to get on here as much as I would like to. Super busy, headed into summer with graduations and birthdays and a brand new schedule. So it's been a little bit, but I'm back and I have been thinking about things that can be put on the podcast that will really be helpful to Mustang owners and people who are interested in Mustangs. And that is going to be the focus for the summer, is providing some resources to help owners and anyone who's interested in helping the Mustang and other horses in need in any way possible. So today I wanted to talk about some of the things that I wish I would have known before I adopted my first Mustang. Some of the things I feel like if I had known would have helped make the process a little bit easier. So to start with, I want to talk about why people adopt Mustangs. And the majority of people who bring a Mustang into their life really want to find success with their horse. A lot of these are private homes. Some are people who want to take the Mustang and train it and then find a home for it. There are others who are trying to make a business out of this, bringing a horse, training him, and moving him into a home. Many of us who are attracted to the Mustang have this dream or this ideal in our mind, especially those of us who are adopting a Mustang for personal purposes. And that is what I did. I wanted a horse. I chanced upon Mustangs. I didn't know much about them. I just saw my mare online. So I kind of learned about them after the fact and didn't really know what I was getting into. But the more I learned about them, the more it grew in my mind that there was this beautiful dream that I would bring this wild horse into my home and have this incredible connection. And I can say that's exactly what did happen. It's been an incredible experience, but it did not happen the way I thought it would happen. A lot of us grew up seeing all these really magical movies, The Black Stallion, The Man from Snowy River, where individuals have these incredible connections with horses. And I will say that's 100% possible, but it does not happen in movie time. The other thing that really influenced this idea in my mind was a lot of the things I was seeing online, and a lot of the people who are online are professional trainers. Many of them are working with Mustangs for different events and programs. And so those are the clips that you see online. And they once again show this Mustang that is wild and scared and fearful, turning to this incredible, obedient horse doing anything the rider wants it to. Now, when I went into training my Mustang, I didn't have such lofty expectations. I really just wanted some safe horses to ride with my kids. So of course I got a Mustang. What else would you get? That's maybe not the best route to go if that's what you're wanting, is just a safe mechanical horse for your kids. I think the way to go for that, whether it's for your kids or for yourself, is to get a been there, done that horse that has had a lot of experience with humans. I would get a Mustang if you want to learn a lot and want an adventure. Let me talk about some of the things that really are things I've learned or wish I would have known when I got a Mustang. And let's start with safety, because the nature of interacting with wild animals, with animals who haven't had experience in the human world, is that there is a lot of fear and insecurity involved. And with Mustangs, depending on the level of interaction they've had with humans when they come into your home, that can vary a lot. I have seen stories of Mustangs who, the person touches them within 15 minutes. Even when I visited the BLM corrals with my first Mustang, there was this little yearling Mustang, and he was just up in everybody's business. He wanted to touch and be close to everybody. That is a very different Mustang and a very different approach that you would need to take than the Mustang who was maybe gathered older, hasn't been in holding very long, or other situations like that, where their experience with you is going to be some of their first interactions. They've all had experience when they were gathered, and those are very high intensity experiences. And then that experience can really vary depending on how long they were in holding, how old they were when they were gathered, and different things like that. It's important to go in understanding that there is a chance this horse will be so fearful it will be fighting for its life. And you need to present your interactions in such a way that it can lead to them learning that they are in a safe place. It doesn't feel safe for a lot of them. Of course, of utmost importance is to follow the standards that the BLM set forth. One of those being the corral height, which is a 6-foot corral. And I've seen people come up with all different ways to achieve the 6-foot height. But I do think that it is really important to have a secure enclosure. So your fence can be 6 feet high, but if it's not secure, it may not matter. I saw an example when an individual had had a 6-foot high fence, but it was something the Mustang could break through, and the Mustang got away. And when they get away, they are running for survival. They are trying to return to the life they knew, which is a life free of humans. So that's going to create a lot of stress and complications, especially when you first bring a Mustang in. So those 6-foot fences are important. I have some really heavy duty preferred fences, and they work great. When I got my first Mustang, she had actually ended up getting halter trained at the prison. And so I was only required to have 5 feet fences. But even that, I would be cautious of, because there was a time when I was not aware of everything she had experienced. It was actually right after the 4th of July. So there, of course, had been fireworks all over the area we lived in all night long that she was trying to take in and understand. And then we had used her water tank for a water parade that we used to have in town. And I was rolling it back to her corral, which is just really loud, lots of banging. And it was just too much. It set her over the top, and she tried to jump the fence. It was terrifying to watch. And so protecting both yourself and especially your horses by having a good solid fence is really just as important as it is said to be, because there aren't a lot of regulations the BLM has in place. They're pretty minimal, in my opinion. But that is something that can prevent harm to your animal, to yourself, to people around you by having the appropriate setup. And I would suggest getting all this stuff in place beforehand. A lot of people get Mustangs because they are cheap, but if you can't afford a good, appropriate setup, then it may not be the time for you to bring a Mustang into your home. Because yes, there is a low upfront cost, but there is a very high financial and especially time investment cost down the line. So make sure, as part of ensuring that your horse is going to be safe and cared for, that you bring them into your home after you have the appropriate facilities. Okay, so maybe you have a Mustang Maybe you've just learned about Mustangs, or maybe you're really contemplating bringing a Mustang home. Here are a lot of the things that I wish I would have known, things that caused me a lot of doubt and turmoil in the process because I didn't understand that. One of the first things is that you are now this horse's guardian and guide in the human world, and that's something that should be taken seriously. I truly believe anybody who wants to have that relationship with the horse can learn all of the skills they need to safely and effectively interact with their horse and build a relationship, but it is not because of an instant connection. It is after you do a lot of work and a lot of education. So I am a huge advocate of everybody training their own horse. And there's two reasons for this. The first reason is because when you learn how to train your horse properly, you're setting yourself and your horse up for future success. It is really tempting to want to just send your horse away for a trainer for 30, 60, 90 days. And so here you have a $125 investment, you have 3 months investment, and in your mind, you might think, I now have this finished horse. That is most often not reality. I won't say that that won't ever work because Mustangs do have a lot of variance. One of my Mustangs, I feel like that could be a pretty likely scenario that he is pretty easy to guide and, well, to control, to put it bluntly, to kind of make him do what you want him to do. The trade-off is if you approach him that way, he has really spiked anxiety and it will show up really suddenly. So he'll kind of hold it all in until it's just too much for him to handle. He's actually the one most people would want, but he is one that I find the most difficult to communicate with because he is less reactive, is what we would call it. But in being less reactive, he has a lot less communication. So he might act like he's fine, and you don't realize he's not fine until he's, bolting with you down the road or something like that, or bucking, which are two things that he has done with us. So I think it's so important and so beneficial. It's not the only way you can send your horse to a trainer, and you may have really good results. There are some really good trainers out there, and I actually want to talk about that later, especially if the trainer is willing to work with you and to teach you. That's a trainer that I would say, yeah, that is one that you want to check out. So whether you send it to a trainer or decide to do it yourself, you are going to need to be ready to learn and to develop new strategies and to open yourself up to new understanding. Because for me, and from what I've heard from a lot of other people, working with a Mustang is a different world than working with a domestic horse. Again, Mustangs have a lot of variation. There may be some horses you can bring in, touch them really quick, ride them really quick, and they're just really level-headed. That has not been my experience. And so for the majority of horses, you are really going to have to do some self-reflection and dig deep into learning whether you choose to train your horse yourself or you choose to send it away to a trainer. I absolutely think you need to have some constant mentorship, that you need to have a community that you can lean on. These are two things that were absolutely essential to me. I actually reached a point where I was pretty discouraged and was thinking of sending my horse away to a trainer. I just couldn't find one that was a great fit, and it wasn't something that was in my budget at that time. I got my Mustang wanting to train her myself. It's something my mom had done with horses, so something I felt like was a possibility. But when it got hard, I kind of wanted to bail out and have someone just do it for me and bring her back and have her struggles, the place we were struggling with, fixed. One problem with this is that I am one half of the struggles that we're having. That's true with any horse. You are absolutely one half of the relationship. So for me, I participated in a lot of the Mustang communities, and there were a couple of very specific times that I got some ideas there that really helped me out. It can be a bit tricky because there are a lot of strong opinions in it, but you can find some good communities, and I'm actually going to start building my own community. So if that's something you're interested in, shoot me a DM or leave a comment, and I'm going to start working on that. It's been in my mind, just one of those things on my to-do list where it can be a community where we can really talk and just experience the Mustang world together and talk about our experiences and what's worked well and learn and grow from each other. But it's so important to have a community. I remember one instance specifically. We lived, when I had my first Mustang, in a neighborhood that had a lot of dogs. And so there was an easement in between the backyards of the houses, and that's where I would work with my Mustang a lot. And there were so many dogs and these huge, great yards for the dogs, and they would just rush out and bark rabidly at you, kind of a horse's worst nightmare and also my own. And we got to a point where I just couldn't regulate myself enough to help Sylvanie, my first Mustang, regulate hers. There were lots of suggestions, but the one that worked for us was to start using some treats, some reward to get her attention back to me. And that's something that we started using and was really effective, helped us to progress a lot faster. And again, part of that was that I wasn't regulated enough. If there had been someone, and maybe even myself now, who had worked with Mustangs and was able to have a more neutral perspective of the situation, I think we could have done it another way. But for me, I just had too much anxiety. I couldn't talk myself out of that she was going to explode, and then she would explode and we'd all, be scared and a little nervous, and a lot nervous and just worried after that. So a community can be a really great place to get some ideas when you reach those stuck points. The other thing that I wish I would have known sooner was to get a mentor of some kind. Find someone who has done it before. I can promise you there are so many people out there working with their Mustangs who would be so happy to give you advice and support. It's something that I also offer at the Touch of a Mustang. And there are a lot of great people I know who do it as well. And it's not even necessarily something you always have to pay for. It can be following YouTube trainers, following videos, finding the things that work well for you, reaching out and messaging people. I can think of 5 people off the top of my head that I think anyone could message, and they would be so willing to help you out, myself included. And there was a huge turning point for me where I had been working with my Mustang. I had had these visions that, I was going to be an extreme Mustang makeover trainer, and it was all going to happen in 90 days. I would have a Mustang that I could ride, and that was not how it was playing out. And I had a lot of anxiety that I needed to work through. And I was getting to a point where I was really just down and frustrated. And then Justin Dunn, who we've talked to on this podcast before and is a great resource to turn to, was doing a clinic at a feed store in my area. And so I really just dropped in. It was a busy day. I dropped in for like 10 minutes, but even in just that time that we talked, he had some resources I was able to use, some groups I was able to join. But the one thing that he told me was that I could do this, that I could train this Mustang. And that had been a big changing point for me, because in the back of my mind, I really didn't think I was probably cut out to train a wild horse. And so just that shift in mindset and having someone who could support me was a big help. So I had that shift in mindset. And then also I went and found the resources and tools that I needed to bring into my life so that I could change that and have the capabilities, have the skills and tools and resources so that I was really able to do it. And that's really what the message is. You are capable of doing it. There are resources out there. You have to learn, and that is absolutely essential. The next thing that almost caused me to give up was having all these expectations and this particular timeline that everything was going to be done. And I felt just this urgent need to have this horse that was trained and be able to ride it. And the reality was much different. I did not put my first ride on my Mustang for a year. And there were a lot of different factors at play in there. It's not like I worked with her every day for a year. So that obviously makes a huge difference. For me, I had a lot of life things that came up in between there. I had kids I was trying to take care of. I had some health issues in between there. And so for me, it was a year from the first ride. But I allowed that to fill me with so much shame. Like, who do you think you are having this wild horse? She's not trained to ride. That's why you have horses, is to ride them. These are all thoughts I had in my head. And pretty much, you haven't ridden her for a year, you're a failure. And I actually did the first ride, and then it was like 2 months before I tried again. And then there was another hiccup in the road. I had a pretty bad accident on another horse, and so I couldn't ride for a while. So while we are having these great dreams about these wild horses, we are also living life, and we have to live life. We have to go to work. We have to take care of our kids, our responsibilities. Unless you're a full-time professional trainer, that obviously is a different scenario. That's what you're doing for your work. But if you're someone who's just bringing a Mustang in your home, it's absolutely understandable that this is not going to be a 90-day experience. It's going to be something that's going to take a lot more time, especially if you haven't done it before, even if you've worked with domestic horses. If you are new to the Mustang world, allow yourself to have time to learn and work and grow. And I actually look back on the times when I was really diligent in training Sylvanie, and they're some of the best memories because I wasn't going on trail rides, which is the vision I had in my head for what I wanted. I was just going to the backyard. All my kids would come out there. They would swim in the stock tank while I would work with Sylvanie. And, we would be getting the smallest things done each time. Like, one I specifically remember was like, I would have to be like, because I'd taken her out of the corral several times, and every time we just had this blow up. And because she had these strong reactions, my nervous system was just fried at the idea of bringing her out of the corral. So we would have days where my goal for the day was like, we're going to take one step outside of the corral and neither of us are going to lose it. And that was our win for the day. My timeline was not 90 days. It was not 1 year. I've had her 9 years now. I'm still working on stuff that we want to do. I'm still working on getting to the point where I want to be. But in that, we're still able to have a lot of really cool experiences, even when it wasn't on her back, whether that was taking her on walks, which is something I highly advocate for with your horse, just spending time with them on the ground, taking them around to new areas while you're just walking beside them. That's something that I really loved doing and has been really beneficial to our relationship. But really focusing on the experience, not the end goal. I look back on those times where it was just on the ground. I was trying to get her to, step over a log, which I don't know if we ever even accomplished, but now we walk over logs all the time in the forest. So a lot of things I thought I had to do weren't necessarily requirements for success. But I go back to those times when I was just training her on the ground. We were still working towards her being saddle trained. And they're just some of the best memories that I have, both with her and with my family. And it can be a really great thing for it not to look the way that you imagined that it would. So let go of those expectations, set those timelines aside, have that big goal in the end, but then set it aside and focus on those little small wins and focus on this whole incredible experience that you have a wild horse, a horse that was running wild now in your life that you get to care for and protect and experience life with. That is really cool. That, I think, will change everything if you can adjust your focus to why you're really doing this, why you wanted this experience. And, trail rides are super fun. We love doing them, but they aren't everything. Competition can be great, but where it really feels like success is when you overcome one of those little obstacles that you've been struggling with. And that's exactly the next thing I want to talk about, is that the clips you see on social media, in the Mustang makeovers, in competitions, those are the result of a lot of diligent work. Those are the result of people who have spent a lot of time and energy determining how they're going to approach their horse and the goals that they have with their horse. That's the payoff moments. Those aren't the moments that are just going to come about because you decided to bring a horse into your life. Those are the things that come at the end. A lot of progress you have may not be super visible. It may be little things like we stepped outside the corral and neither of us lost our minds. It might be something as small as I went into the corral and my horse took a step towards me instead of away from me. We don't see those as big things. Those aren't usually recorded. We don't know they're going to happen. We don't necessarily even understand the significance. but it is those small things that lead to those bigger successes. And so this magical, attuned relationship is absolutely possible. We can have moments like we saw growing up in the Black Stallion, but it comes after a lot of time and hard work. And hey, if you're willing to go with your horse on an island alone for a month, you probably can develop a great relationship also. That's not the world we're living in. So we really have to be realistic in the amount of time we're spending, the logistics, and the overall experience that this is a wild horse coming into a totally new world and so willing to work with us and learn and figure it out. If we can offer some grace, if we can open ourselves up to learning, and if we can set aside our self-doubt and really focus on this dream that we have to live a life with these Mustangs that are being gathered and need a home. And another thing that was huge for me is I went in thinking I knew a lot about horses, which I find very funny now. But I had horses through my teenage years, and then, life happens, college, marriage, kids, that all took me away from horses. But in my mind, I was still the teenager who knew everything about horses. And I thought, this shouldn't be a big deal. I know a lot. I also thought, I see all these other people doing it. Certainly I can do it. But I had to let go of almost everything I knew about horses. Obviously, there are some basics, what they need to eat, much of their care, but there are a lot of things that I had to learn to let go of. I'll just share a few big ones, and not by any means inclusive of everything I changed in my perspective. The first one was you have to show them who's boss. And I learned that one really quick because my Mustang is very strong and she is a great communicator, meaning she very clearly tells you what she is and isn't okay with. And I learned really quick, I'm not going to be able to boss this horse around. I'm not going to be able to have a control-based relationship with her. We're going to have to find another way to do it. Now, I say that we couldn't. There are still people who try. There are a lot of devices out there that are meant precisely for that, to have control over your horse. If there's one thing I want everybody to take away from this, to know about Mustangs, you will be more successful if you create a partnership where you are working together instead of a control-based or a boss-based relationship where you are always yielding and working towards your own agenda. A partnership means that both sides have a voice, and that means that you are communicating, that you are understanding what they're feeling, what they're needing, what they're wanting, and they are learning to understand what you're feeling, what you're needing, what you're wanting, what your goals are. It is a tricky balance. It's a lot easier to just say it's going to be control-based. We are going for a trail ride today. We are going to go this direction. We are going to go to this competition. We are going to get in the trailer today, and to do whatever you can to make that happen. That may or may not work with a Mustang. My experience, a lot of times it's not going to work. Experiences I've heard from others, a lot of time it's not going to work. You have to put in the time and effort, and you really have to be open to learning new strategies, to trying new things. I grew up always hearing you don't give horses treats, they're going to bite your hand off. There is a way that you can do positive reinforcement using treats where you can use it as a motivation. I think it's at a lower level of interaction between the two of you, but sometimes that's where we need to start, is at that lower level where we are maybe using treats to calm both of our nervous systems. That's really something that I had to do with my Mustang. So some of the things that we have been told forever are right or wrong are not necessarily right or wrong. Another thing that I learned that I totally changed was you don't get off a horse. If you're on a horse and they're misbehaving, if you get off, that's going to reinforce their misbehavior. That's something that I don't believe in at all. It can get to that point if it's repeated indefinitely. That will certainly become a learned behavior. But as a one-time thing, that's not going to happen. As an intermittent thing, that's just not how learning takes place. That's just not the psychology of how our minds work. We can look at it the reverse, and if there is something intense coming up, Say we're on the road and a really noisy trailer I can tell is going to go by us. That's a situation where I might get off my horse and I might have my daughter get off her horse, depending on reading my horses and how they're doing. Sometimes they don't care and I'm like, okay, I think we're fine. But if they're perking up and dancing around, they're clearly on high alert. And then you have to ask yourself, is it worth me staying on? And the possibility that, my horse is going to jump in front of the truck and get hit, or go off the side of a mountain because I wasn't willing to just step off my horse. And it's not widely accepted. It's something I do all the time because safety is of utmost concern to me. I'm often out with my kids and it's not worth it for me to push a horse almost to threshold. We don't know if we're going to go over threshold and potentially have an accident that could harm me, one of my children, my horse, just to prove a point. So some of those rules that you've known for so long might be ones that you want to set aside and develop a new idea around. As far as getting off a horse, people might see it as, the horse is controlling me. The horse is now in charge. I see it as I'm showing my horse, like, I can look at you. I can see this is making you really nervous. And you know what? I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to be here on this ground supporting you and helping us get through this so that this is okay. And next time there's a good chance that we're just going to stand there while this very noisy trailer goes by, or why a rabbit is jumping across the path, or dogs are barking at us, or a car is passing us, whatever it might be. I think there's real value in showing your horse, I'm aware of what you're feeling. That's part of the communication that we can have with Mustangs, is they can communicate to us like, I am really uncomfortable right now, and we can communicate back. I see that and I'm going to step down and I'm going to be here and I'm going to support you. That has been huge and powerful for me. And I wish that sooner I would have been more okay with saying, I know this is what I've heard, but this isn't what feels right now. So I'm going to try something different. Or I'm going to look for trainers who do it different than what I'm used to, because this way that I'm used to or this way that I learned doesn't feel like the right thing to me, or we're not getting good results from it. My horse continues to be anxious out on the trail. It's not working. Be okay with saying something's not working, even though I thought this was what was right. This is what I thought we should do. It's not working. We're going to go back to learning and to trying some other things. Now, if you allow this journey to change you, if you allow the Mustang to have a voice in your life, it will. So this is an experience where you can become an entirely new and better person. My experience has been, I wanted so badly to succeed with my Mustang. And so when things weren't working, I was forced to, if I wanted it to work, look really closely at what the dynamics of the situation were. And what I found was, a lot of the time, I was a significant part of why we weren't having success. And as I navigated through that, it helped me, which I've talked about lots before, it helped me really find different things in my life that I need to change. One I can think of off the top of my head that was huge was my anxiety. Before I had a Mustang, like, I could tell you, yeah, I'm anxious. I did not understand the level of anxiety that I was carrying in my life, not even related to Mustangs, related to just facing life from a fear-based perspective, that I have been able to change immensely since having my Mustang and being willing to change and to alter my perspective and to really question, is the way I'm seeing this situation the reality of this situation? And so that was a huge thing that changed for me. I was really able to move from just living in fear and anxiety almost constantly, especially as a mother. There are so many things that you fear, so many places you feel like you need to have control. You want to control the outcome. And I really learned that a lot of my fear was based on my inability to do that, but also these imaginings in my head of things that may or may never happen. And because I have been able to step away from that to a large degree, it has opened up a whole new world for me, for my children, and for my interactions with the Mustang, where I really stepped back, leaned a lot more on logic and being analytical and being realistic than just jumping into those really strong emotions of anxiety. And that's just one of the really big ways that my Mustang and my experience with her has gone over into my everyday living and my overall mental health, because I was able to step back and allow myself to change, to not insist that I already knew and was right in everything I was doing, and to open myself up to learning from this experience and learning from my Mustang. Another thing, and what I want to close on, is that there is very likely a time that you will want to quit. That may come in the form of handing it off to someone else. It may come in like rehoming your Mustang or thinking somewhere else would be better. I can remember with absolute clarity a moment when I was just laying in bed thinking about, it probably hadn't been a good day with my Mustang. Life probably had challenges at the same time. Just thinking, like, what am I doing? She deserves so much better than me. I should just find her another home. And I wanted to quit and give up a lot of that. I wanted to quit because I didn't feel like I was ever going to be the owner or the guardian that she deserved. And I didn't. I kept her. But the reality was that this story I was telling myself in her mind, that there was a better place for her, was not true, because there are good homes out there for Mustangs. There are excellent trainers. There are people who care for them deeply and do all they can to provide the best home that they can now that they've been taken in from the wild. And there are those homes, but there are not nearly enough of those homes as there are Mustangs that need those homes. The idea that I could find a better home for her was a very unlikely reality. At the point I was having these thoughts, she was halter trained, but she wasn't saddle trained. And most people don't want a horse that's not saddle trained. They don't want a horse that's reactive. She was very what they would call reactive, what I now call communicative. She was very clear in her communication of what she was and was not willing to do. Most people don't want that horse. There was a much greater likelihood, if I would have found a different home for her, that it would have failed, that she very well could have ended up at a rescue or in another home that also wasn't equipped to deal with her, to learn with her, to grow with her, to manage her, however you want to say that. It's much more likely that she would end up in the slaughter line. There are a lot of Mustangs that do, because they are quote unquote difficult, because people had a certain way that they thought that they should be trained in a certain time that they should be trained within, and that wasn't reality. So this idea that she would be better off without me was a lie I was telling myself. If you have a home, you can provide for this horse, and you are willing to learn, there is absolutely no better place for a Mustang than a committed, dedicated home. All those things, if it's something you want, are things you can acquire. You can acquire the financial resources to care for a horse properly with proper equipment and proper facilities. You can acquire the needed knowledge to bring this horse into your home, to learn what you need to. As long as you're teachable, you're willing to change the way you do things, and as long as you are dedicated and committed. And I want everybody that is thinking about Mustang or that has a Mustang to know, in my eyes, from my experience, those are the absolute essentials. You have to be willing to work to care for your horse, and you have to be willing to change yourself, your ideas, your philosophies, your understanding, to increase your education, to make it a successful experience. If you're going to go in to getting a Mustang having a specific agenda that you hold fast to and you are not willing to change or alter, there's a good chance it's going to not be a successful experience. If you are willing to really take it in, and what you really want with a horse is a partnership, and you're willing to see how that might unfold, then those are the factors that are really going to lead to success. It is an amazing journey. It is one of the best things that you can do if this is where your passion and where your love lies. And if you really have a true desire to help a horse, there's so many different ways this can unfold. It doesn't need to look like anyone else's journey, and it doesn't have to have a particular outcome. It could be that you have a horse that only does liberty, or that you only take for walks. Or it could be that you have a horse that you take on to do endurance events or competition with. There are a lot of different possibilities. The thing that it's really important to be open to is that you open your mind to what those possibilities might be. You might get a Mustang thinking that you want to work in hunter jumper, and that Mustang may not be the horse for that. Will you be okay with that? Will you be okay if the horse and your experience with the horse is different than what you imagined it? I've certainly had to do that with some of my horses, and in the process of doing that, have had other really beautiful experiences and relationships unfold. So to close with, if you are thinking about this journey, if you need help in this journey, don't hesitate to reach out, whether that's to me or whether that's to someone else who you have seen have the relationship you want to have with the horse. Reach out and ask questions. Be willing to learn. Be willing to look stupid. Be willing to have moments that feel like you're failing. That means you're growing. If you're willing to do those things, if this is something you really want, you definitely can do it. If you have a Mustang you're struggling with, you can do it. If you feel unsure, reach out to people who have been there. Get advice, experience, encouragement. It is such an incredible process. These horses are truly magnificent. It is a beautiful journey that you can bring into your life if it's something that you want. Thank you so much for being here. If you care about love, enjoy Mustangs, please don't forget to follow, subscribe. Those are all things that helps the technology gods, the artificial intelligence tell the world that this should be shared with more people. Thanks for being here, and I hope that you find a way to enjoy these beautiful animals and let them change your life for the better.
Thank you for joining us and learning about horses that heal and the humans who help them. We hope you'll continue with us on this journey. We'd love for you to subscribe on your favorite platform and follow The Touch of a Mustang on any of the major social media outlets. Please share with your friends, anyone who loves horses, or anyone who might be struggling and could benefit from this message. If you have felt the healing power of horses or help them in their divinely appointed mission, please reach out. We want to hear your story. As we say goodbye, always remember that the horse is always there to help you heal.